Imagine, if you will, the entire population of Canada living inside the Greater Toronto Area. 40 million people living inside these boundaries. Now imagine 12 million people living in Vancouver, or 13 million people living in Montreal. Well, that is the stated ambition of the very influential lobbying group and charity called the Century Initiative. They want to grow Canada's population to 100 million people by the year 2100. The Century Initiative is the brainchild of two World Economic Forum members. The first is former chief executive at McKinsey and the former Canadian ambassador to China, Dominic Barton, also known by his Chinese name, Bao Damin. The second is Mark Wiseman, former BlackRock executive. Wiseman doesn't have his own Chinese name, at least not yet. But back to the Century Initiative. It's hard to think of a more destructive and dangerous idea to the future of Canada, but nonetheless, that is the goal of the Century Initiative, and it's being carried out by the federal government as we speak. A cursory overview of this charity, however, reveals two things. The first is that the Century Initiative is really just propping up a giant Ponzi scheme taking place in front of our eyes. In order to keep Canada afloat and our social safety net functioning, more immigrants need to come into the country to pay for that system. But the more people we bring in to pay for our system, the more that system needs to provide, therefore requiring more population growth. This destructive cycle is not sustainable, and it will eventually have to crash, ultimately hurting the people at the bottom the most and enriching the people at the very top. The people, for example, who staff the Century Initiative. The second thing that becomes obvious when looking at the Century Initiative is that Canada is already on pace to exceed 100 million people by the year 2100. In fact, if we keep up this current pace, by the year 2100, at a minimum, Canada's population will be 120 million people. At 40 million people, where Canada is at right now, our country is on the brink of collapse. Nobody can buy a house, nobody can find a doctor, and millions of Canadians are struggling to put food on their table. But hey, what could possibly go wrong with this plan? Drop a like in the video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question for the episode is this: is immigration a giant Ponzi scheme? Let me know in the comments, and let's get into it. Here is the Century Initiative, in their own words, in a promotional video which you can find on their website.
Because our quality of life is tied to the size of our population. You see, if we had more people, we would have more economic activity and a bigger workforce. That means more potential tax dollars, which we could use to create more sustainable cities and improved social services, like affordable housing, green transportation, and that free healthcare we're always talking about. Plus, we would reinforce our reputation as an open and diverse society, giving us a more powerful voice on the world stage. But population growth doesn't happen overnight. We need long-term thinking, a vision, and a plan. That's what we do. Century Initiative is paving the way for policy change that leads to prosperity. We've crunched the numbers, and we know that by the year 2100, we need 100 million people to achieve the quality of life we want. That means we need to grow our population now.
The leadership of the Century Initiative is a perfect mosaic of Canada's elite. Politicians, lobbyists, consulting group executives, banking executives, you name it. Almost every single person involved in the Century Initiative project, A, have close connections to the current Liberal government, but also, B, have a deep financial interest in maintaining aggressive demand for housing in this country and an endless supply of labor which will suppress the wages of Canadians. But who really does benefit from Canada rapidly expanding its population to 100 million in such a short time frame? Is it the average Canadian, as the Century Initiative would like us to believe? The average Canadian who right now is struggling to buy a home, to start a family, and to put food on his table? Or is it the very top of society? The people who run massive businesses who benefit the most from suppressed wages? The people who already own lots of real estate and benefit from a shortage in housing? The Century Initiative is very close to the Trudeau government. That's why you see the Liberals carrying out the Century Initiative's plans.
I'm pleased to share that Canada intends to maintain its target of welcoming 485,000 new permanent residents in 2024 and 500,000 in 2025. Starting in 2026, the number of newcomers we aim to welcome will stabilize at 500,000, allowing for a sustainable population growth.
Dominic Barton, the founder of the Century Initiative, is extremely close to Justin Trudeau. While Barton was the chief executive of McKinsey, one of the world's largest consulting firms, Trudeau appointed Barton to be the chair of the Advisory Council on Economic Growth. After his time as chair on the Advisory Council of Economic Growth, Barton was appointed by Trudeau to be Canada's ambassador to China. Under Justin Trudeau, the federal government has given tens of millions of dollars to McKinsey to assist the government in basically governing the country. A lot of the taxpayer money that Trudeau gave to McKinsey happened while Barton was leading the consulting firm. Oh, and other McKinsey executives sit on the board of the Century Initiative right now. Oh, and wouldn't you just know it? The government department responsible for giving the most amount of taxpayer dollars to Dominic Barton's McKinsey and Company during Justin Trudeau's leadership happened to be Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, $24.5 million given by IRCC to McKinsey to help them draft immigration policy. According to the CBC, McKinsey's influence over Canadian immigration policy has grown in recent years without the public's knowledge, according to two sources within IRCC. Both spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. So take this in. Dominic Barton, who started the Century Initiative, was the head of McKinsey and Company, while Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada gave $24.5 million to McKinsey to help them draft immigration policy. This group has immense influence over Canada's immigration policy, and we're seeing it play out as we speak. One of the Century Initiative's partners is the Globe and Mail. You will routinely find in the Globe and Mail's opinion section articles promoting the Century Initiative or articles written by the Century Initiative's leadership. As far as we can tell, there aren't many politicians calling out the Century Initiative by name. One of them happens to be Quebec Premier François Legault, as is written by CTV. Premier François Legault says Quebec is saying no to the Century Initiative, a plan by an influential lobby group to increase Canada's population to 100 million by the year 2100. It is in Quebec that we decide the number of immigrants in Quebec. And to be very clear, there is no question of following the approach of the Century Initiative regarding the growth of immigration. Other politicians, however, don't seem that interested in calling out the Century Initiative. But think about this, for example. As we've already discussed, Canada simply can't keep up with the demand right now. Our infrastructure is crumbling under the weight of demand. And when it comes to housing, perhaps the most acute problem in Canada right now, we know, for example, the arguments being put forward by the federal government that immigrants who come to this country will build the homes for everyone else isn't actually proving to be true. We already knew it was fake when they said it, but now we have the data. As you can see here, labor shortages in the construction area have risen faster than any other sector. Furthermore, in the GTA, the place where the Century Initiative wants to put 40 million people, no one is actually buying the condos being built right now. According to an article in the Toronto Sun published this past weekend, condo sales in the GTA are at their lowest levels in a decade, prompting builders to shelve dozens of new condo projects for the time being. Urbanation, a condominium market analyst, reports 40 condo projects totaling 13,000 units expected to be available this year have been delayed. The Century Initiative, this influential lobbying and charity group, has spent far too much time in the shadows making drastic changes to our immigration policy. It's time Canadians know who they are and what they're all about. Because even though it looks as though Canadians do not want to pursue this reckless path of immigration, that's the path the Century Initiative has chosen for all of us. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us today on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratioed.